Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the CONVO Couch. I am Fiorella Isabel, and just going to hold off here for a sec. So, everyone's been talking about this infamous Dave Rubin interview Tulsi did, and a lot of people from all sorts of political affiliations were really concerned. But it's specifically some establishment types and some progressives and even some Bernie supporters were concerned about Tulsi's answers. Initially, when I heard about this interview, I was getting worried. I was like, well, what did she say? And I only saw snippets of the things she said, and I was concerned when I saw the snippets. The moment I saw the entire thing all the way through, I was like, what? What exactly went wrong here? What exactly did she do? I was waiting for her to do something, and she really didn't do anything. There are things that I disagree with her on, and I will make those points as to why I disagree with her on. But as far as the whole, oh, she's canceled, or I'm going to stop donating to her, or she's not a progressive, all of that was fueled by people who really didn't like her to begin with and who were waiting for her to do something else and who have been waiting every single time she does any kind of sort of controversial interview. People go and wait for her to do something. They're like, wait, is this what she did? Like, as if it's like expected for her to mess up. And I think we have to step back and look at, is this something that is based on the objectivity of the interviews, or is this something that we're kind of ingraining upon ourselves based on what the media is doing? And I know this because this happened to Bernie in 2016 all the time. It's still happening to him, but now they have another focus as well, which is taking some of the attention, whether good or bad, so, and that is Tulsi. So I'm not here to defend Dave Rubin. I know he's a libertarian. I know he has right-wing stances. I don't really watch him at all. But that doesn't mean she shouldn't go on the show. Again, the left, the establishment left, and some of the progressive left have this idea that we only need to talk to our echo chamber, that we only need to talk to people we agree with. And that is simply not only just wrong, it is going to hurt us in the long run, because there is half of the country that not all of these people are racist. They simply disagree with you on tactics and how to go about things. And Tulsi is one of those people that I've seen, like Bernie Sanders, that will sit and go and talk to the other side and will get yelled at for saying not everybody's a racist. If you guys remember, Bernie Sanders has been yelled at by the establishment for saying not everybody's a racist by talking to the working class people in rural areas, something Hillary Clinton did not do, hence why she lost the nomination. That was a huge part of why she lost. So we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to dissect this interview. And I might disagree again with Tulsi on some things, but Anna and Emma released a video on TYT. I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's like a 12-minute video where they literally just came on her and attacked her. And every chance they get, this is what they do. And the reason I'm talking about them isn't because I have some sort of vendetta against them. It is because I see that their bias is strong and their journalism isn't fair. So when I first heard about what they did, I didn't realize it was this bad. And then when I finally saw it, I saw that there is a huge bias and that Elizabeth Warren has never had this kind of attitude. When they criticize her, they're very soft on her criticisms, even though her recent actions and her actions in the last year and a half have actually been extremely worrisome. So let's get to it. Tulsi's patriotism. So here, Anna and Emma talk about her patriotism, how Tulsi doesn't criticize America, how she's just entirely in love with her country and her patriotism. And let's just watch that. And just let me point out that Elizabeth Warren has been waffling on Medicare for all, like Emma said, but there hasn't been an entire video made to talk about how she's done this. So let's get to it, Johnny. Let's look at what TYT said, and then I'm going to look at the full interview.
Democratic candidate Tulsi Gabbard recently made an appearance on Dave Rubin's YouTube show. And I just want to note, he's not really a progressive or a liberal. He kind of comes at things from a more libertarian perspective. So it's fascinating to see how he frames questions about various political issues and how she answers them. Now we're going to start off with a clip about how much Tulsi Gabbard loves the country. Take a look.
I had Glenn back in here a couple days ago, and he said, he didn't even know that you were coming on because this just happened in the last day or so. But what he said was, I disagree with Tulsi on almost everything, but it's very obvious that she loves this country. And I think one of the things that's happening for sort of mainstream liberals, let's say not progressives, but sort of old school liberals, and then pretty much everyone on the right, is they're watching the candidates, the Democratic candidates, and there's this sense that they don't really love the country. Like they really think it's so fundamentally broken or wrong or historically awful or some version of that, but that doesn't come across with you. That's not even a question, I'm just handing you something.
I am unabashed in my love for our country. It's what's motivated these major decisions that I've made with what I want to do with my life.
And I retweeted one of your last tweets, which was like a 30-second clip where you talked about freedom and liberty and things like that. I love all those words, but those words now have been really associated with the right and not with Democrats. Do you find it odd that, I mean, right in there's a giant American flag in my control room and all of those things, and I've got the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in there. Like, do you find it odd that it seems that the Democrats aren't embracing those things? There's a weird running from them.
I'm disheartened by it because of all of those who have sacrificed for our freedoms.
A lot of different things to touch on there, but the framing of Rubin's question is the top issue for me because the way he framed that was, progressives don't love America, do you agree?
She basically said yes. And she took the bait.
And remember, she's...
Okay, so first of all, we're talking about the framing of Rubin's question. That is not her fault that the interviewer is framing his question a certain way. This criticism is superficial because it's based on entirely on the framing, and it makes no sense because she's doing what any good candidate does. She's pivoting back to what her focus is: unity, bringing people together, uniting America under our values. Very similar to what Bernie Sanders says when he pivots back to the focus of his policies. In fact, as a volunteer, you are told to always pivot back to Bernie's policies. I see this reminiscent of that, going back into focus, not falling for the trap of actually paying attention to what he's saying and creating conflict, but rather going above it and around it and pretty much talking about, look, this is what I mean by that. I mean unity. Why waste time on his gotcha questions? And let's play, Johnny, the Rubin clip that they completely left out where she expands on what she says.
And that the sides are, running off in different directions and the middle keeps getting whittled away. Do you think you could have envisioned that way back when?
Probably
those 18
not.
years ago?
Probably not, especially the major decisions that I've made with what I want to do with my life. 9/11 was a pivotal moment for me. I had already just...
Like they really think it's so fundamentally broken or wrong or historically awful or some version of that, but that doesn't come across with you. That's not even a question, I'm just handing you something.
I am unabashed in my love for our country. It's what's motivated these major decisions that I've made with what I want to do with my life. 9/11 was a pivotal moment for me. I had already, just even when I was much younger, I decided that I wanted to pursue a path of service somehow in my life, but it was that attack on our country and our people on 9/11 that really shifted the course of my life, and I chose to enlist in the Army National Guard because of that, because I wanted to go after those terrorists who had attacked us on that day and took those thousands of lives. Something that I and so many others in this country continue to remember as we approach the anniversary of 9/11 here in just a few days.
Yeah, so speaking of that, so I wasn't planning on going there, but since we're only 4 days away from the 9/11 anniversary, would you have ever imagined that the sort of level of discourse and the way that we seem to be fraying and that the sides are, running off in different directions and the middle keeps getting whittled away, do you think you could have envisioned that way back when?
Probably
those 18
not.
years ago?
Probably not.
Yeah.
You know, especially the unity that we saw in this country after that attack took place. It was a beautiful thing, and I think it really represented what we're talking about. That as different as our ideas may be, as different as our backgrounds and stories may be, as diverse as our country is, we stand united as fellow Americans, and we are there for each other, especially during those darkest of moments. But increasingly, we are seeing these divides further tearing us apart as a people, and a loss of that remembrance of what that unity is and why it's so important, that common ground that we stand on as fellow Americans, and how integral that is to our identity.
How do you think we...
Okay, so they completely cut to a clip that made it look like she was just being patriotic for no reason. Like she was just, you know, she doesn't care. She's a veteran, for crying out loud. Like she's still serving. And she expanded on the whole reason why she feels the way she does. I think, you know, as I'm not very patriotic myself. I'm not a fan of having the flag everywhere. I'm not, you know, to me that is symbolic of the jingoism of certain things that have made us very pro-war. But to a veteran, not having some sort of connection to that would be an oxymoron. So how can I criticize her for feeling that way? I mean, I think it's fair to say a lot of us love this country. I love this country as an immigrant. Like, you know, I value the things that are here. And I think expecting her to say anything else is kind of ridiculous, especially since she served her country. Now, I want to go here because she doesn't pander to identity politics. She's completely against identity politics. I am myself entirely against it. Of course, a lot of things serve to be identity politics, but sometimes it's weaponized and used only to tokenize people of color for votes. And here she starts talking a little bit about it at 24 minutes and 34 seconds.
We should speak English so that they learn English, so they can be more assimilated and integrated, and all of those things. And yet identity politics seems to have completely taken over.
Yeah, there was a woman, we did a 4th of July parade, a bunch of them actually in New Hampshire. It was right after that first set of debates, and it made an impact on me. There was a woman who was sitting with her family and friends at the end of one of the parades, so we stopped and we said hi, and she was from Central America, and she made it a point to pull me aside, and she put her hands on my arm. She was very serious, and she said, whatever you do in a future debate, don't speak Spanish. She found that to be so patronizing, and blatantly so. And I think that the identity politics that are being used, again, to further divide us, to further drive separations between us, and purely for selfish political gain, is a real danger. I agree with you. It undermines that unity that we have. That doesn't come with groupthink or saying, well, hey, we're all exactly the same, we think the same way. Not at all. Yeah. It's that unity that we have in recognizing our diversity and our strength and who we are as Americans, and the principles and freedoms that make up the bedrock of our country.
I mean, I agree with her. I agree that identity politics is extremely dangerous. Not in the sense of my identity isn't important as a Latin American. Not in the sense that Black Americans' identities aren't important. I think we're conflating things here. That's not what that means. What she's saying is when we weaponize this to be like the reason you're going to vote for Kamala Harris for president is because she is a woman of color. The reason we're going to vote for Elizabeth Warren for president is because we need a woman in a White House. Those are not valid reasons to support someone for any candidacy, for anything. We need the best person for the job, you know? And in my opinion, the best person for the job happens to be a man. And so because of the record that he has. And so when we tokenize and use identity politics, like she was talking about, Beto and Booker and the countless, all these Democrats that went out and spoke Spanish, the way that women felt is the way I felt. I'm like, what are these people doing? They're clowns. They're pretending to be, to speak Spanish to get that Latin vote. And to me, that is patronizing. Like she said, it is offensive and it is dangerous because then we're all just going to rally and focus on superficial identity politics, not like what's really valid, not the economic issues that people of color are facing, but only the identities on the outside that they pose. And that's just wrong. So I entirely agree with her. Johnny, at 26 minutes and 22 seconds, she explains why she's a patriot. Did we already? No. Okay. So this is just further proof of their whole, how Anna and Emma's whole thing that she doesn't criticize her country, that she's super patriotic, is wrong.
Those words now have been really associated with the right and not with Democrats. Do you find it odd that, I mean, right in there's a giant American flag in my control room and all of those things, and I've got the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in there. Like, do you find it odd that it seems that the Democrats aren't embracing those things? There's a weird running from them.
I'm disheartened by it because of all of those who have sacrificed for our freedoms. Just yesterday morning, I went back and read Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address again. You know, that short, I think it was less than 2 minutes, where he very powerfully laid out how best we can honor those who gave their lives on that battlefield to birth a new nation based on those principles of freedom.
To her, what to me might seem a little bit too patriotic, because I've been, you know, like I'm not happy with the current state of affairs. So for me, it's just a little like, I just can't be happy with, you know, showing that sort of patriotism. That doesn't mean I don't want to say the words freedom and justice. To her, that has an entirely different meaning. And we may exhibit our patriotism in different ways, but I have to respect that because she's, as a veteran, to her, it means something entirely different. And I can disagree with her on how I display my love for this country. That doesn't mean that she's some sort of right-winger. That doesn't mean that she doesn't criticize her country. And I'm going to show you exactly how much she criticizes her country, because the only reason that she's getting all of these smears is because she's literally criticizing the military-industrial complex, the mainstream media, taking on Google, all of these things that I don't exactly have time to go over. But this is her whole agenda. That is why she's here, because she's criticizing her country. So to say that she's not being critical of her country is ridiculous. So here she criticizes Trump's pseudo anti-imperialism. Actually, let's go to 1040, Johnny, where she tells Rubin why she's running.
As if that is conservative. I mean, that's what they're trying to sell now, which is bizarre.
A reporter asked me this question literally just yesterday after the New Hampshire Democratic Convention. She said, well, you know, she's talking about how I've made it a central focus of my campaign that we need to end these wasteful, counterproductive wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and redirect our taxpayer dollars that we've wasted for so long, to the tune of $6 trillion since 9/11 alone, redirect those resources back here to serve the needs of our people, to take care of the urgent concerns people have, whether it's healthcare, infrastructure, education. And her point was, well, this sounds like a conservative message. I said, what are you talking about?
Right.
She said, well, you know, the conservative message of how do you pay for things? I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I said, I'll tell you what, Americans across this country are sick and tired of hearing from politicians and from their government that there's not enough money to make sure that kids in Flint, kids in Newark, kids in communities across this country can't have clean water to drink, because the government can't make sure that that infrastructure ensures clean water.
Yeah.
You know, they're sick and tired of hearing that, you know, levees are failing and there's massive flooding in rural Iowa that's ruining farms for their entire year of crops. And they're told, well, you know what, sorry, there's just not enough money to make sure that this infrastructure is holding to keep you and your family safe. So this is not a conservative concern. This is an American concern, and it is a call to action to change our priorities, bring about this sea change. This is why I'm running for president,
right.
to bring the leadership and the conviction to stand up to the foreign policy establishment, the military-industrial complex, bringing the experience that I have both as a soldier as well as in Congress to shift our priorities, to stop this waste and bring it back to that central focus of serving the American people.
Yeah, well, it's just such a fact.
So literally, she literally says it there. This is why I'm running. I'm running to change the whole imperialist agenda that we have. I'm running to bring our troops home, to unite our country back, to focus on our people here in America and the needs that they obviously have. Like, she's literally saying this because she doesn't agree with the way the country is being run. That's why she's running. So how is she not criticizing her country? How is she this patriot that isn't criticizing her country? At 13 minutes and 19 seconds, she's criticizing Trump's pseudo anti-imperialism. So if she's doing that, how is she some sort of a right-winger?
Is a little trickier as opposed to if he was just more of a traditional Republican, maybe, or
I
even
don't
Obama,
think,
who went
yeah.
into Libya or wherever else.
Right. I don't think it makes it tricky at all. Trump campaigned a lot on this message of ending stupid wars, bringing our troops home, calling out Saudi Arabia for being, one of the biggest supporters for terrorism that they are. The problem is, after he got into office, after he got elected, he chose to surround himself with the very same neocon war hawks that have been pushing for more of these counterproductive regime change wars for a very long time. People like John Bolton, people he has now, Secretary Mike Pompeo. And I think we find ourselves in the position that we're in where, in fact, Trump hasn't carried through on the promises that he made, the rhetoric that he was using during that campaign. And that's where I find so many people who are coming to our town hall saying they feel betrayed because of that, because he has not only not brought our troops home, and yes, he's working on getting our troops home from Afghanistan, and that is good for America. I wish him success in doing that. They should have come home a long time ago, but we've got more troops in Syria. He and his administration has pushed us very close to the brink of war with Iran, deploying more troops to Saudi Arabia and to the region, escalating tensions there. While even though he says on television that he doesn't want to go to war with Iran, every one of his actions has pushed us to that brink where we sit today, where just a match could light the whole thing on fire.
How do you balance the rhetoric?
So not only is she criticizing Trump, and again, Tulsi doesn't like labels, and I respect that because I think labels also put us in boxes. But not only is she not criticizing, is she criticizing Trump, she's also aware that we can't just tell people who voted for him that they don't matter anymore. We need to understand that a lot of people who voted for him because he campaigned on being this anti-establishment, anti-interventionist candidate, and people thought he was going to do that, and he hasn't done that. So she's like, look, he hasn't done that. So look, I want to do that. I want to unite us. I want to do this. Look, listen to me. Come to our side. Listen to what I'm saying. That's it. And that's as simple as it is. And how is that not criticism, again, of her country? Here, she also criticizes the DNC and the rules. But before we go to that, Johnny's going to do a couple shout outs on our CONVO Couch and MSCSC as well, and Facebook.
All right, let's start the shout-outs. Let's see. We got Anzu Mazaki, Michael Lee.
Is this on CONVO Couch?
This is on our YouTube CONVO Couch. Michael Cruz, of course. Kimberly S. Jack Smith. Das Hoost.
Thank you for watching, you guys.
Freedom Fox 1. Chris Bemis.
Come on in.
Ed Marin. David Mazel. Kimberly Collins. Tulsi. Come on. Brian McManus. We have a lot of there's a lot of hate in the all the trolls are out. Let's see here. Ryan Robinson and MCSC Network, Larry Parr, David D. Hilster, David Sexton, Karen Skinner, Copy Cooney, Citrus, Kathleen Looney, Eric Brooks, Wes.
No, she didn't. She didn't say it was a #1 danger. That's what Rubin said. She didn't say that. I'm responding to one of the things. She said that'll be recorded in history. She didn't say that.
Victor Valderez, Steve Wolfbrandt, Rocky Bellingers are top fans on Facebook. Dolores Pierce, Lynn Lombardi, Lane Farmer, and let me check out Twitch here. We have 2 viewers. Tony watches closely. What's up?
What's up, Twitch?
Yeah.
You gotta get in there and play a game.
That's what I'm saying.
Johnny's gonna teach me Black Ops.
Yeah, that's it for now.
Okay, cool. So let's continue to the DNC rules. And identity politics is a huge problem. If you guys don't realize that by now, it is absolutely a huge problem, because the way the establishment left is using it, is weaponizing it, is literally putting off more than half of the country. And Donald Trump has so much support, and I think the left is kind of discounting that support. And as a leftist, for me, it's really ridiculous to see that, because we're gonna lose, and we're not gonna have anyone but ourselves to blame with these falling into these tactics of attacking each other over identity politics instead of sitting and talking about it, which is what Tulsi's doing, which is why she's such a danger. Let's play it.
There's a feeling now that even with you not being in the debate, that it's just unclear which polls are allowed to be looked at and which aren't, and how they, accumulate all of them and look at the numbers and all that. Do you think the DNC is actively working against you? Do you think it is corrupt? Do you think it is in bed with one of the other candidates or several of the other candidates? What is happening, do you think?
What's clear is that this system lacks transparency. The whole process is lacking transparency. And that's the change, and that's the reform that I'm calling for from the DNC in this. Because if they're not transparent with their process, and you pointed out some of the issues that are coming to light here is, well, these small number of polls are qualifying, these other ones are not. Why is that? Who are they actually talking to? How many people are they talking to? There are credible, accurate polls that they're choosing not to recognize, and questionable polls that they are. So the problem with all of this, and I speak as a strong Democrat, is that it creates a lack of trust in Democratic voters, that the DNC is actually working for their interest in creating a very fair and transparent process. And when you've got a lack of trust, then you've got people who wonder whether or not they should even be involved at all, whether or not they should show up to the caucuses and the primaries if the fix is already in.
Yeah, and that
Right. So this is what I hear from a lot of people who aren't political. I have friends who aren't political, and they say, well, what's the point of voting if it's already rigged? And this is the public perception, and she's simply talking about that. And I think this is very critical, because I haven't really heard very many candidates at all. I think Bernie has touched on it a little bit, but really to harp on this hard on the issue of the DNC and what they're doing to her in the polls. And she's very diplomatic about it, as she is about everything, but she's still saying, look, there's no transparency, and there isn't. And I think if we as progressives, or if you consider yourself one, or whatever you consider yourself, are not calling out the corruption that's happening with the DNC in these polls, I don't care who your preferred candidate is. Wrong is wrong, and we should be talking about it. So I'm glad she spoke about it in a way that was very diplomatic, because she is a presidential candidate, and she doesn't want to be put into the what she's already being put into as being this fringy candidate. And she goes even further than that and talks about how she's called for open primaries and an end to superdelegates, just like one other candidate, Bernie Sanders, at 17 minutes and 57 seconds.
Who ran for, those delegate positions, to sit on the Rules Committee to try to bring about some of these changes. I've been calling for an end to superdelegates for a while now, calling for open primaries, make it so that our system and our primaries are open, transparent, and actually representative of the votes that people are casting. We're not anywhere close to where we need to be. They got rid of superdelegates just in the first ballot at the convention. But if there is a challenge ballot, as given a crowded primary, there may likely be, then in the second and any ongoing ballots, superdelegates will come into play. So
right. So ultimately,
okay, this is very important because I haven't even seen anybody talk about the superdelegates like this. She said there may very well be the superdelegate vote. And this is what I've been talking about like crazy over here to a lot of people. And I'm going to have to do subsequent videos on this because it is so important that we understand that because there are so many Democratic candidates in the field, it is very unlikely that one of them is going to get the majority and we're going to go to a contested convention and then eventually the superdelegates are going to vote. And when the superdelegates vote, they can vote for whoever they like. When if we look at the climate debate that they were trying to have, the DNC had enough votes in favor of having the debate, but then Tom Perez came in with 75 proxy votes, all from lobbyists. If that is happening right there, do you not think it's going to happen in the bigger sense? And this is one reason why I believe Tulsi is an ally to Bernie and why she needs to stick around as much as possible in order for one of them to be the progressive that's left, because the establishment is going to line up, and they have already started lining up behind probably Elizabeth Warren is what it's looking at this point. So I digress. Another thing she talks about is that the debates don't offer much of anything to the public at 20 minutes and 7 seconds.
The only thing people are promoting or remembering are those flashpoints, are those sound bites that the media promotes. And no, I don't think it's just us, because I've been hearing from folks who were seeing out in the Labor Day parades, and people were saying, you know, gosh, you did great at the debate, but I really want to hear more, you know, really have an in-depth conversation with candidates, allow us to be able to make our case, to share our experience, the positions we hold, the vision that we have for this country in a meaningful way. And voters aren't getting that. And you know, you see some of them saying, I don't have time for this. I don't get anything by spending 2 hours watching that debate.
Right,
So
that's the thing.
I'll go somewhere else.
You don't feel more educated after it.
So the public literally is only hearing a performance, sound bites of a performance. And luckily for Tulsi, she was able to take down Kamala with facts and receipts that she had, and that she was able to prove. You could go back and Google it. Hey, Kamala Harris did this. And that honestly helped Bernie a lot, because Kamala Harris was supposed to be the chosen one. And now they've gone through Biden, Kamala, and Biden is I mean, rumor has it he's done, right? And so Warren is the last card, like I said in the last video. So I want to move on and talk about why she basically tells everybody, again, reminds everybody why everybody is after her, why they hate her, and why she doesn't adhere to labels, because this is very important. I think a lot of us aren't comfortable with someone that can't fit in a box.
I don't doubt that he wants to do this. It's something that he's done what, 3 times before? I don't know if this is his third or fourth time.
I think,
running.
yeah, this is at least his third time, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't doubt his intentions. I think there's a bigger question here about all of the different factions that exist within the Democratic Party. And I think that a lot of the inward-facing attacks from one section to the other that we're seeing is not only, it's not good for the Democratic Party, it's not good for the country. You know, all of these different labels and boxes, whether they are within the Democratic Party or outside of it, further divide us.
Yeah.
They further tell us, and this is one of the challenges that people in Washington have had with me from the very beginning, is I don't fit cleanly in any one of those categories or those labels, and they're scratching their head like, well, we can't figure her out.
Right.
Which is incredible, because
that's how most
it's
of
very
us are.
simple. It's how most of us are. We
Yeah.
look at things, look at issues like, does this make sense or does it not make sense? But for me, I'm motivated not by an interest to serve my party or to get somewhere politically, but I really actually want to serve my country. I really want to serve the people of this country. I'm going to do my best to do that, and that's the lens through which I view these different issues. Does this action or policy, in my view, best help people? Does it best help solve a problem? Or is it something that's going to be harmful or cause further stress or struggle or pain and suffering?
what's very different about Tulsi is she's actually an independent. And the only other person I've seen hold similar independent views is Bernie Sanders. I would say Andrew Yang recently falls into that category. But she literally does not fit in any boxes, and I think that does make a lot of people uncomfortable. Like, what is she? Is she conservative? Is she liberal? Is she this? Is she that? I think the majority of Americans kind of fall into this. In fact, the majority of Americans are statistically independent. And when you have a candidate like that, that candidate is a threat because everybody likes a little bit of her. I may not agree with every single thing she says, but she says it in a way that makes a lot of sense. She's a logical thinker. She leads with her logic. She doesn't lead with her emotions, which a lot of politicians, if you haven't noticed, use their emotions more than anything. I want to move on to back to TYT because Emma lies about Tulsi not supporting Medicare for All again. I called it out in the last video, but she's lying again. So, Johnny, do you have it at 3 minutes?
To run. You can have issues with the history of the country. We're not allowed to find, the genocide of Native Americans questionable in this country's history. We're not allowed to talk about slavery. We're not allowed to talk about, what it was like before the civil rights era. We're not allowed to talk about what it's like now for a lot of people in disenfranchised groups.
I don't even know what he's talking about when he's talking about her. He's got a flag. But to be fair to her in this instance, I don't know what he's talking about that distinguishes her as loving the country more in this right-wing framing than the other candidates. Like, what specifically about her? The fact that she's a veteran. Pete Buttigieg, I can't talk tonight. Pete Buttigieg is a veteran. So what's the difference here? The difference is that she kind of plays both sides when it comes to these kinds of issues. And so when we're talking about progressivism, I don't think it's progressive to not endorse Medicare for All or be a co-sponsor of it when it's first introduced and then sign on to it later when it becomes a presidential talking point. You're planning a run in 2018 and you sign on in 2016. And then your supporters go online and say Elizabeth Warren's the hack when she was a co-sponsor right away. So that's very fascinating to me. But keep going.
So Elizabeth Warren didn't sign on until 2017. Tulsi supported Medicare for All in 2016. She actually serves on the Medicare for All caucus. Tulsi believes in Medicare for All pretty much, and that it's not representative right now. It's only representative of big insurance companies and big pharma. It's on her site. If you go, there's a tulsigabbard.org site. There's also another site created by her supporters that goes in deeper. Unlike Elizabeth Warren, who has never had it on her site, by the way, and who has been waffling on it, admittedly by you, Emma, and you never made a video about her waffling on it. You've actually continued to dismiss it. But all of a sudden Tulsi is you're insinuating she's the hack. And it's a little ridiculous to at least not say, look, they both kind of supported it at around the same time, but Tulsi was actually more supportive of it in the beginning. In fact, it was Elizabeth Warren who supported it after Bernie Sanders was the one that was pushing it. And Warren did not support it in its iteration. That would have been in 2003 when Tulsi was 22 and was enlisted. It would have been in Conyers' bill. Conyers' bill here, if we go to congress.gov, it's HR 676, the Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act. They've been pushing for Medicare for All forever, and this is in 2003. So no, she didn't. She wasn't a co-sponsor. I looked it up. She's not one of the co-sponsors there. So plus, Tulsi was only 22, so Elizabeth Warren is much older. Elizabeth Warren was a Republican until she was 46, I believe. Okay, so now that that's done, moving on to the big one that a lot of people had issues with, and I'm going to be frank, I do disagree with Tulsi here, but I have to say, objectively, I don't really see anything wrong with her answer. TYT, let's go to what TYT says at 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Giant blow-up constitution in the control room right now.
See, we love the country. We have a giant American flag behind us.
Look at that.
So, all right, well, let's move on to the next topic at hand. And this has to do with immigration. And again, pay close attention to how Dave Rubin frames the question and how Tulsi Gabbard answers.
So immigration, I think there's a general sense that the candidates, the Democrats are basically trying to outdo each other for open borders, something like that. A, do you think that's a fair way to start the question? And B, where do you sit on that?
I don't support open borders. Without secure borders, we don't really have a country. I think there's a few things that we've got to do when we're talking about immigration reform. One is we've got to have secure borders. This is not Trump's wall from sea to shining sea. It's about seeing, again, what makes sense. I look at things from a practical, objective-oriented standpoint. I'm a soldier, so I look at what's our objective? Secure the borders. In some places, it may make the most sense to have a wall or some kind of physical barrier in place. In other places, it won't make sense. So you use technology and use all the other tools that we have ultimately to accomplish that objective of security at the borders.
Wait, let me pause you there. So is the problem, though, just from that starting point, which seems so obvious? I think the average person watching this is going,
okay, so first of all, they didn't show, I'm going to show you what they didn't show. But Rubin said open borders, something like that. He wasn't very specific. And let me just say, Rubin is kind of, for lack of a better term, kissing her butt. Like, he really is. He's like, flowering her, pumping her up. This is very apparent. I don't for a second, because of his background and because of some of the things he has said before, think he would be doing this with like someone he didn't like. You know what I mean? Tulsi has this ability to get people who don't necessarily agree with her, just like Bernie Sanders, I keep saying it because it's true, to work. She has an ability to work with anybody. But this is what they didn't show at 50 minutes and 55 seconds.
people that are further to the left of you going, well, there's some level of racism or xenophobia there, or, I mean, that's what there's always that subtext to this conversation.
Which is, I think it's a big problem, because it takes away from, again, be very clear-eyed and pragmatic and practical about this. If you want to advocate for open borders, that's fine. Stand on that platform, make that argument, and have your facts and your evidence to back it up. I don't believe that's smart. I think that our country needs secure borders, just like we need to reform our completely broken immigration system. Our legal immigration system is not working for anybody. It's not working for our economy. It's not working for our businesses. It's not working for our farmers. It's not working for our families. And our broken legal immigration system is only worsening the problems that we're having with people who are then coming to this country, whether it be on tourist visas or other visas, and then overstaying. Or you have people who are trying to come into our country between ports of entry. For those who are seeking asylum in our country, we're seeing so much of what's happening at the border because of a severe lack of resources going towards those judges and administrators who are there to adjudicate and take these cases and make their assessments and make those decisions. So I think broadly, those are the three things that right away we need to work towards doing. And I think if we did so, if you take away all the political noise and the rhetoric and the flame throwing, I think we'd actually be able to get legislation passed. We'd actually be able to solve some of these problems.
Okay.
Is this one of those?
So let's be honest. Some of Congress, like AOC, have advocated for open borders. As far as the candidates, Julian Castro is the most fierce advocate for open borders without saying it. Tulsi is right. One of the first questions in the debates, they talked about decriminalizing border crossings. And this is essentially open borders. I'm not going to say it's exactly the same thing, but it's essentially that when you have no legal issue crossing the border, if you're not going to criminalize it, then what are you going to do? What is your solution? It's not really offering a solution. So I'm not agreeing with Tulsi on this issue, but I also see where she's coming from in terms of logistics, in terms of practicality. You may have other issues as well when you say it's okay to cross the border. People might be panicking inside. You might have a mass migration issue. And with the state of our economy, it's only going to send other people into panic. Now, I disagree because the majority of Democrats are not actually advocating open borders. They're simply wanting some sort of better solution. The majority of them, however, haven't been specific enough as to how to address this. Bernie Sanders has been pretty specific, but outside of him, the majority have just offered platitudes and no solutions. As much as in theory, I am an open borders advocate, I believe that eventually we won't have borders. I'm aware that a lot needs to be done in order for us to get there. people are extremely against open borders, and we will further divide the country when we have not addressed issues here in America, and when you make them feel like you're just going to open up a can of worms. I am for open borders, but I understand exactly why people are not. And if she's a soldier, again, she's looking at this logistically, she is going to advocate it in a completely different way. I think where she fell short here is that she didn't make that connection that I've been waiting for between the regime change and the imperialism in Latin American countries, specifically Central America, specifically countries like Honduras. Honduras has one of the highest migrations of the people coming in here. And the reason they do is because we went in 2009 and had a coup in there under the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. And we pushed out a dictator, like she was talking about, a dictator who wasn't a dictator, Manuel Zelaya, and we put in whoever we wanted, and then that caused civil unrest, and that led to those people fleeing here now. And I've been to the border, I've talked to these people, I've been to the caravans. This is a crisis that we need to deal with. And I think she also should have mentioned, for the sake of this interview, that she is for a pathway to citizenship, because that's exactly what is on her website. That is exactly what's on her website. She says that she wants a pathway to citizenship. She says we need comprehensive immigration reform to address our broken immigration laws, and we need to have a serious conversation about the most effective and humane ways to compassionately secure our borders while building bridges and cooperative foreign policy with other countries. We need to ensure we have a clear, enforceable, accessible, and humane pathway to citizenship. Most urgently, we must pass the DACA to ensure children who know no other home are allowed to remain in the U.S. and take steps to ensure children are not separated from their parents. We must fund and equip agencies in charge of processing asylum claim and protect migrants, many of whom are women and children who are going through our asylum process and fleeing natural disasters, religious persecution, or violence under an asylum status. All of this is true. This is all on her website. Again, you guys can find it. She wasn't going to go into that in that interview. She should have at least mentioned it. I think it was a mistake not to, because people are so, just quick to judge if you don't say your whole platform pretty much in an interview. They're like, well, they didn't say that. We need to stop being so reactionary, guys. Like, this is what she believes in. That is her platform. Does she have to repeat it every single time? No. But I think she should have made that connection with Latin America. I think she could do better on that. I think, and I don't agree with her on having open, that most Democrats want open borders. I think what she meant was that it's pretty much essentially the same thing. And I don't agree with her on the immigration. I mean, I'm an immigrant. Like, I understand exactly what it's like to go through that entire process. And obviously I'm going to have a different point of view than someone who completely doesn't have that point of view. And I accept that, and I'm okay with it. And I say that I think her point of view essentially falls literally in line with the Democratic Party. And one thing she did mention, one of the reasons she did say what she said, is because she's exposing how the Democrats are tokenizing once again and manipulating their words and the Latino to get the Latino vote. They're using their emotions to try to rile up and get the Latino vote. But do you really think any of these people are actually going to go through with having not anything remotely close to open borders? No, they're not. Even Castro, no. And a lot of people like to praise Castro. I guess on immigration he's decent, but he's from California. A lot of the things he's done are actually anti-progressive. And I don't have time to go into that right now because this is already a long video. But we need to stop looking at things as black and white and so reactionary. If someone who's an immigrant who has a lot to say on immigration can look at this and say, well, her answer is pretty much falling in line with what other Democrats have, I don't really understand why all of a sudden she's so anti-immigrant, like TYT wants to make her look. And let's look at her legislation quickly. I don't know if you put it up already. Yeah. She legislate HR 3440, the DREAM Act. the Dreamers Information Protection Act, H.R. 496, the Bridge Act, which codifies the DACA program, H.R. 392. She co-sponsored the Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act, which would remove the existing pre-country cap on employment-based green cards and ensure all immigrants are treated equally regardless of their country of origin. I look at legislation. I don't just look at what people can say in an interview, depending on who they're talking to, because we all do it. We all talk differently. That is actually a tactic. When you're canvassing, you're going to talk to people differently who are of different affiliations. Really quickly before we end, I'm going to go on gun control, because TYT twists this and makes her to look like she's some sort of pro-gun advocate when that's entirely not the case at 10:19.
Groups when yet again, what's it called? Christians for Israel. Okay, we're still having a conversation about the progressivism, and it's because other progressive talk show hosts or pundits online are afraid of the Tulsi Gabbard fans. I'm not afraid of you guys. I'm not afraid of you guys. No, I'm gonna call it like it is. And sorry, I'm gonna dive into the internet pit, and it's fun for me because I want to call things like they are.
R.I.P. her mentions.
Yeah, I don't care anymore. It's fun.
But it's not even about, look, people are gonna get upset when you criticize their candidate one way or the other, right? And it is what it is, but it's not gonna stop us from doing our job. So let me continue doing our job by going to the next video. And this has to do with gun control. Take a look.
Ask her about guns. You got to ask her about guns, because the general feeling, they want their guns, basically. So can you just sort of lay out your position?
Yeah, I think that I stand up for Second Amendment rights. I don't think it conflicts with the need. I feel we also need to have sensible gun safety regulation. I think that the fact that we have not seen any kind of legislation pass for a very long time is because on one side you have people who say there should be absolutely no regulation whatsoever on guns and who can own them. And on the other side, you have folks who are saying that they want to repeal the Second Amendment and they want to get rid of guns completely and take everyone's guns away. And you have those two extremes on both sides, kind of pointing their arrows at each other with no real substantive dialogue and conversation happening with that entire space in the middle where we recognize that there's no conflict between upholding our Second Amendment rights while also making sure that these guns are not put into the hands of those who would seek to do incredible harm to other people.
So what would be a sensible law that
She actually said the correct thing. She's not talking about Democratic candidates. She's talking about people. On one end, you have people who literally want to ban all guns. And I know plenty of people who actually fall into that category. I am not one of them. And on the other end, you have people who want absolutely no restrictions on gun. Right? And these are the two arguments we prevalently see in the media and what they use to continue this divide. And she's literally saying that. So what is so wrong with her saying something that is the actual truth, representative of the fact that the media only loves to talk about the two extremes, pundits love to talk about the two extremes, but nobody's really addressing the issue. Where most Americans fall is, I don't think we should ban all guns, but I think we should have some restrictions, which is where she falls because she's pretty much an independent. She's a Democrat, but a lot of her policies are pretty much like independent of that. At 30 minutes and 52 seconds on that, she denounces the NRA.
I think there is a problem with the guns and the kinds of shootings that are happening every single day in cities like Chicago. People, families.
So is
who
that
are
the weird
impacted.
thing though? Because Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and we've got to recognize that. I think that's unfortunate sometimes that those who are calling for gun safety reforms often turn a blind eye to the reality of what's happening to families every day in cities like that. Where kids are being shot on their way to school. There's incredible violence that's happening in some of these inner cities that we as a country have to recognize. This is a deeper challenge that we have as a country that goes beyond passage of legislation. That is one piece of it, but it is not the only thing that's going to help make sure that we're protecting our kids and that we're protecting our loved ones.
When you hear things like the city of San Francisco designating the NRA a terrorist organization, do you think that's helping or hurting?
I don't think. I think that further deepens the divide. You know, I don't support the tactics that the NRA uses at all. I think that they are part of the problem, not part of the solution. I think that what we need as a country is for more dialogue to happen between people who feel like they sit on opposing sides of this camp, because if they actually just talk to each other, I think most sensible folks would be able to come together and say, you know, when it comes right down to it, I think our goals and objectives are probably closer together than we realize.
Okay, so she denounces the NRA. She says they're part of the problem, but she doesn't use the extreme language because she believes logically that people are going to tune that out. It's very clear. She's not a person to use divisive language. I get that. To me, the NRA is a terrorist group. I mean, frankly, like they're, but ultimately more than anything, they're a lobbyist group. They have so much power, just like AIPAC, and they use this power to basically make money off of guns and the subsequent deaths under guns. Now, she's also right that the majority of these issues happening are not just about guns. This is systemic. There are plenty of issues that happen in America, even in other places that have guns. They don't have the same rate that we do. If in a 2013 Gallup poll, many people believe that the government isn't doing enough to protect them. This is also something that goes along with us not trusting our government. About 60% of people, the reason they own guns is because they want protection against crime, 36% for hunting, and 21% for recreation/target shooting. So the majority of people want a gun because they want protection. Kamala Harris owns a gun. She said she wants protection. She was a prosecutor her whole life. So these are the things that we need to pay attention to when we're looking at this issue. And instead, what Emma and Anna are doing is vilifying her as being pro-gun. Actually, when we were at the Tulsi town hall, when we were covering that, she got a question from someone who said, I'm afraid of your stance on guns. I feel like you're trying to ban all guns because you wanted a ban on assault weapons, and I don't agree with that. And she stood her ground and said, no, I do support a ban on assault weapons. So how can she be so pro-gun, and how can she be so extremist and equating some people who do want a full ban on guns? Because some people do. Some of them are my friends. Some people do want a full ban on guns. And she's simply relaying that fact. So all of these things that I've been talking about for like 30 plus minutes all comes down to the fact that we need to stop paying attention to this sort of like headline buzz like pseudo journalism that some people on TYT are providing. And we need to realize that Tulsi falls in line with pretty much with Sanders, who many Democrats have used and attacked. Again, Sanders was attacked for the Brady bill. So he has since been a little bit more harsh on the gun issue because he got a lot of flack for it. But, you know, the reality is this is a very complex issue, just like all the other issues we've talked about today. So just in summary, you guys, I want to thank you for sticking with me. I know this was a long video. I know you guys could have watched something else. I think Johnny has something he wants to talk about before we go.
Yeah, I just want to take a time. You know, today is September 11th.
Yes, it is.
9/11 happened 18 years ago.
Yes, 18 years ago.
Yep. And I just want to take a second to just, a moment of silence for everyone, who was affected by it, all the firefighters,
yes,
all the, 9/11 first responders, and
yes,
everyone who lost their life,
All right, guys. So today, just remember, and several, I know Bernie's talked about it before. Tulsi's talked about it. Some of the presidential candidates have also spoken about it. We were attacked by Al-Qaeda, which was effectively nurtured and created by the United States Many of the veterans who went and fought in Iraq went to war under a lie. This is why regime change, standing against regime change, standing against our imperialism, standing against war, advocating for peace is so important. And when you see candidates that represent peace, represent unity, represent togetherness being vilified, it's because they're a threat to the way America has been conducting themselves forever. Engaging in these wars abroad and hurting people abroad, and also bankrupting our people here in America from things that we can have: Medicare for all, education for all. We don't need more money. We don't need to know how to pay for these things. These things can pay for themselves if we just decrease our military budget. Military budget, by the way, that Anna and Emma, Elizabeth Warren voted for 3 times. I just want to remind you of that. So to me, being anti-war is one of the most important issues that completely and directly relates to our domestic issues. So thank you for sticking with me throughout this long show. Thank you for watching. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Join our Patreon, because that is how we can keep going. We are fully independent. And I want to thank you guys for always listening and sticking by us.
And we will never take a check from Katzenberg to change our political views or change our commentary on anything.
Nope. So thanks for watching, guys. From Johnny and me, Convo out.
Peace.
Bye.